Welcome back to the Big Small Business Show. This is our panel section, and today we are using our panel insert to talk about the recent budget. In studio with us, we've got Peter Faber, who's Senior Executive Tax and Legislation in SAICA, and Professor Sharon Smulders, Associate Professor, Department of Financial Intelligence at UNISA. So before the break, we were talking about some of the unintended benefits for small business. But I also heard you say that directly or indirectly that you also are engaging government in terms of what you think they should be doing. What, in your opinion, has been, I'm going to speak to you, Peter, what, in your opinion, has been heard and what still desperately needs to be heard, and in particular in relation to small business, because we see ourselves as an important part of building the economy into the future?
Well, I think the first thing is just getting the accountability, especially on payment, right? And I don't think this should be such a difficult thing. This is low-hanging fruit just to get your payments within your 30-day cycle. So that has been to government. Last year we saw the minister announcing that we would see accountability and all sorts of measures taken for people who don't comply. That still doesn't seem to have happened, which is a concern. The indirect thing, talking to government, is rather call it a knock-on effect, and as a discussion we've had, is the state of education. So I don't care how your business, if you don't have people who are educated to actually properly use in your business or to actually start a business, you're going to have a problem. And we know that from, even though we spend a lot of money on education, that's not coming through. So one of the projects we have been engaging, which we call the School Governing Body Project, is actually deploying accountants to previously less privileged schools to start doing the account and working on financial reporting standards, so you have centralized. The reason for all of this is that what we've seen in the schools, we started off with about 10 schools, we're into about 192 schools in 6 provinces, working together with those provincial departments, is that once you sort out the finances of a school, we've seen in many of the schools 100% improvement in academics. It has a direct, so getting the Department of Education to start looking at, for example, that schools report, there's, for example, no reporting standard. So at the press of a button, you actually can't get data to actually understand where are things getting wrong, who's spending what, and actually getting that as a starting point at the bottom end of. I think the third thing is, when we look at government, I think it's a discussion right through, don't throw good money after bad money. And I think that's a big problem. Is not necessarily, we've had this whole since 2008, this populist called stimulus spending by governments. These things only work if we're spending on things that add value to the economy. Otherwise, we're throwing good money after bad money, and it just doesn't work. We aren't creating the things that we want to create.
And now the suggestions for an SME, for an entrepreneur, in this whole maelstrom of stuff that's happening and not happening. If you had to speak to the audience, our SME audience, what are some of the things you would suggest to them?
Well, I think the big thing that we're looking at, and I know the OECD is looking at it, and South Africa has formed part of it, is financial literacy for SME owners.
Yes.
We're finding that, well, we're doing a pilot study. We've just done a pilot study, and we hopefully will go live this year. We did the pilot study last year. On what are the financial literacy levels of SME owners, and some of the results are quite scary. But just on the education, I mean, we're just pumping more and more money into our education system. I mean, we are giving free tertiary education, etc. But our literacy levels are one of the worst in the world. Hungary, for instance, I think spends 10% of what we do, and they've got a 99% literacy level. So Peter's correct, is that we're putting money into things, and it should be going there, but it's what's actually happening there is not seeming to be working, and that's what we need to change. So I think we need to build financial literacy skills amongst SME owners. I think there's a dire need for that. So either get them while they're young, make sure the education system teaches that, but for those that are already owning the SMEs, we need to assist them with financial literacy and tax literacy as well.
And if I can come in there and just relate that back to the incubation space as well, because that's my space. A few years ago, and this is talking about the financial literacy, and we had 31 people apply from government or quasi-government incubators to join us. There's a basic case study, we call it the Busi case study, which is effectively an income statement that they're required as the first sort of test to enter as mentors into our program. 2 out of 31 got that right. And these are people teaching other people financial literacy. and yet 2 out of 31. We've got to clean that up as well. It has to be cleaned up.
I agree. And we've got to take it one step further. I mean, the normal training methods are also not sufficient anymore. We need now the technology into that as well, which is a good thing as well, because I think we can reach a lot more people using that, but we must get the infrastructure right to be able to do that. Another positive thing is the data costs for small businesses that might be going down. Yeah. So hopefully that will help too, which is important.
And I mean, you asked what would, and that's the point, is these are the types of things that small businesses leverage. We know we've got a skills shortage. Yes. As we can drive down data, access to devices is not the challenge in South Africa. If I want to go to a school in Kailicha, giving them iPads is not the problem. Somebody has to pay for the data for them to use and access the actual knowledge.
I want to quickly go back to financial literacy. You gave your perspective from Race Corp. At our business, Spartan, we finance SMEs, we finance entrepreneurs. We also see this lack of financial literacy with entrepreneurs as a big barrier in them accessing finance from us. So financing is available, but to the extent there's a lack of knowledge, it reflects in how they don't run their financial affairs and how they're engaging with us. And that itself is their own worst enemy.
So it's how to get SMEs funder ready.
Yes.
Teach them how to get funder ready. Yeah.
So we've got 2 minutes left now, and let's just maybe move on to, and I hate to use the word radical, but it seems so like such a popular word to use. But any radical ideas that are floating around right now from a budget point of view for a future budget, are there any ideas that are floating around that might surface next year? Because very often these ideas tend to need to be socialized first.
You had your wish. He's giving you the fairy godmother. One wish, say it.
Yeah, driving here today, I heard one. They want to sell the Northern Cape to Namibia and use that money for our budget deficit. So I don't know. Sounds a bit radical, but they said those people don't want to be part of South Africa in any case.
On the radical side, it's difficult. I mean, the only biggest thing that's in the budget is obviously money and spending of money. And to a large extent, that's access to finance. Whether that's just the biggest challenge, and I think that's the problem, is the radical big challenges aren't necessarily just money. It's from labor, it's from skills, it's just the red tape in actually getting things done at local government level. I mean, running a small business where your fridges are going down because of load shedding and losing all your stock. So there's all these other things that are actually more important, but I think from the budget point of view is one, actually getting money, access to money on the one hand. The other is having services that actually deliver. Somebody actually said, I know I was on an interview on 702, and they were quite sweet and short and said, government must actually help to get where we need to go or get out of the way. They shouldn't be an impediment. They should choose on which side they want to be, but that is as short as it should be. And that should be a philosophy, is either we're helping you go where you need to go, or we're getting out of your way to at least get there. And to me, that is, if you look at a radical approach, that should be it. It shouldn't be a very complex thing. Just let business do what business needs to do.
On that note, we're going to have to end it. Peter Faber, thanks so much for being in studio, and Professor Sharon Smulders, thanks for bringing your perspectives to today. A budget, whether we like it or not, affects our lives, and it's something that I think as entrepreneurs we need to be very cognizant of.